All right, brother King Messiah, what's going on, brother? Welcome, welcome. You gotta unmute yourself too, brother. All
All right,
right.
peace. You can hear me, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What's
Appreciate you
good with you,
having
brother?
me. I try to be as quick as possible. Just chiming in on the topic. uh, you know, I want to just say I feel like there is a cultural revolution going on when it comes to foundational Black Americans or Black Americans, and we have to admit and acknowledge that for the first time in history, Black Americans are starting to take this pride in their culture, their lineage, and so forth. It's not a movement or organization, more so it's a bloodline that a lot of Black Americans are identifying with. We have people in our family, elders in our family, who have always told us, "Hey, I don't know much about Africa. My lineage is rooted in this American soil." We have grandparents that have always mentioned that to us. So I think what we're experiencing is Black Americans, foundational Black Americans, indigenous, aboriginal, whatever we want to call them, native Black Indians, whatever. For the first time in history, they're starting to take an unprecedented amount of pride, love, and self-respect in this American soil. Black people never was proud to rep the American flag. We were all told that we came from Africa and we were trying to get back what we felt was taken from us, which is our African culture, our African lineage. So I just feel like it's getting distorted in the messaging, and not just you, but a lot of people are acting as if Black Americans are being divisive because they're simply saying, you know what? I love and embrace my lineage and my connection to this American soil. And that's the whole big issue. And last thing I'll say, when the elder Professor James Small said, I think Tariq Nasheed is wrong for, he said, I think he's wrong for condemning Black people just because they have immigrant background. I think that's where it became misleading, because everyone can admit that Tariq has never just went at a Black African because he's from Africa. It's only when we get in these Twitter spaces and there may be bots or there may be trolls, I can admit that. And when the insults are thrown towards Black Americans, of course, they throw them back. Whether that's childish and that's counterproductive, that's a different story. But I think that's the only thing I heard from that interview you did, that Professor was a little misguided in saying those are the words he said just because they're immigrant background. Tariq is going to condemn or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, brother King Messiah, first of all, I appreciate you for pulling up for the conversation. As I was listening to you speak, my wheels were spinning. It's funny because you mentioned that Tariq has never condemned an immigrant for being an immigrant, but he referred to me as a tether just because I disagreed with him. Right? I'm not who they would. It's funny, right? Even the introduction of the concept of a tether. Do you know where that word has its origins from?
I believe it was from, the movie Us, the immigrants here in America that don't acknowledge their immigrant background.
Hold on one second.
I'm gonna let you go finish.
Yeah. Prior to 2019, was that word used in popular Black American culture?
No,
What
no,
group of Americans was using that word prior to 2019?
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, so the word is a popular term among white nationalist groups, particularly white nationalist groups who are anti-immigrant. So the fact that that term was picked up by Black Americans, right, and used against so-called the immigrant population, what occurred is, you should go check out the essay that I did called "Does the ADOS and MAGA Convergence Signal Imminent Economic Collapse?" Because
In the
when
book's
we
letters
start
and
to have
notes on the North
economic
American indigenous
anxiety,
people of North
you
America,
start
written
to
in
look around and
1841
it's like, yo,
by
who's
Arthur
eating my
George
food?
Cartland
Especially when it's
and
like, well,
noted
I'm
as
getting looked
stenographer,
over. I'm
describes
supposed to be
American
getting
indigenous
these
people of
things,
North
but I'm
America
not getting
as
them
all
because there's
primitive
this
tribes
other
known in
group
America are
who the
dark,
state
copper
prefers
colored with
because this
jet
other
black
group
hair,
isn't as
while most possess
revolutionary and
pearls
or
in the
rambunctious. So
extreme,
now the
which
state is
today
giving
is
them my
considered
food and I'm
nappy hair.
starving. So now it's
And
like,
every
yo,
level of
y'all
wavy hair in
motherfucking enemies, y'all
between.
usurpers, y'all
The
goddamn
texture of the
tethers.
hair
And
is generally
that's
fine,
the
soft or
energy
silk, or coarse
that
and
is
harsh.
replete
Catlin also noted
within the
the hair
ADOS
of the
to
men
the
falling down
FBA
to the
movement
hams, and
from its
sometimes
very
to the
inception,
ground,
right? People
is
were talking
divided
about
into
Well, why
flats
didn't
or
just the ADOS people
slabs
lock in
2
with
inches
Nkoba?
wide and
Well, a
filled with a
clear line of
profusion
distinction was
of glue
around
and earth,
identity.
which becomes very
And
hard
Cobra was
and
always
remained
clear that
unchanged
we are
from
an African
year to
people,
year.
right? Our race is African, but our
Today,
ethnic
this
group,
form
we're
of
African
hair is
Americans.
called
They were always
locks.
clear on that. And when you say that there's never been a moment of pride in being African American, I don't know where that comes from. Actually, I do know where it comes from. It comes from this long and dark night that we've been in as a group. Our decline culturally, politically, and ideologically has gotten us to this point where our youth are like dry plants. And when they get a little bit of water, they perk up. And I think that what was provoked in them or incited in them was like, yo, there is some pride that I should be having in myself. You should love yourself. You should love your culture. I love African American history. I love everything about, using your term, our lineage, right? But I've also studied enough and I know enough about my history to be able to place not just our lineage, but our sojourn in its proper context. And understanding our sojourn, I would never take pride in the American flag, right? This is what you just said. For the first time, we can take pride in the see when you start to conflate the two. I'm of the soil here. My family goes deep in the soil just like yours. So I can take pride in my Southern heritage, that Southern culture, right? And as I start to study, and then I realize, like, oh, some of these aspects of my Southern culture or Gullah culture are Africanisms that also show up in other Black cultures throughout the diaspora. Oh, when I travel to Brazil, the Africans there do this. Oh, that's similar to what we do in Black America. Oh, when I travel to Haiti, the Africans there do this. Oh, that's very similar to this. Oh, when I'm in Jamaica, the Africans there do that. Oh, and you start to see the commonalities and the connections. So, although I have a love for the history and my heritage, I never confuse that with this colonial settler state of the United States of America, which enslaved my ancestors and which is at war with me to this day. This is why you're demanding reparations, because it's enslaved you and now it's economically choked you to the point that you can't survive. And because there's no food or no water coming, you're looking around. It's like, yo, I'm getting crowded out by all these other Black people that are showing up in the center of the empire. Because America is no longer just a country or a nation, it's an empire. So without the correct analysis, that beautiful passion that you have for your history and that rage that you have for injustice, it'll be directed the wrong way. You'll start loving your enemy and hating your brother. And that's what I see when I look at the ADOS and the FBA movement. Like I said, I'm okay with ignorance. I'm not okay with ignorage. I'm not okay with militarized ignorance. So I would just say, before you make statements like we've never had this level of pride before, if we didn't, then why is there an African American heritage flag?
Okay.
Do people create flags for themselves that don't have pride? Maybe
All right.
just say that you were not familiar with the pride and you weren't familiar with it. And you know what? How would you be? You were disconnected from it.
Well,
right? When we fell from that political equinox, when after the counterintelligence program and after heroin and crack and mass incarceration and miseducation in these colonial schools, how could you know your history, even your history here on this land, if you didn't go back to get it?
okay. I mean, and I appreciate everything you said, but the mere fact that you're adamant about using the term African American is a disrespect to your Native American ancestors here. What I'm trying to express to you, brother, is
You don't know your ancestors then, because every single one of your ancestors from 1797, from the 1600s to 1700s to 1800s to 1900s, they all referred to themselves as African. If you actually no, if
the
you
Native Americans refer to themselves as African,
brother. Oh my god. So what I would like for you to do, because you know what I said at the very beginning of this thing. So first of all, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna slow the pace of the conversation, right? Because let me tell you something about me. Professionally, right? I'm a CPA, and I'm giving this as an analogy. As a CPA, there are principles that we use for accounting They're referred to as generally accepted accounting principles. I'm sharing this with you because that generally accepted component, what happens is, and I saw my sister's comment earlier, my sister pro woman ninja. I don't want to come across as like intellectual elitist, but there's certain points and conversations that have already been generally accepted, like similar to like the world is round, right? So it's like if you exist in a reality where everybody thinks that the world is round or knows that the world is round, and then you come in contact with somebody who starts talking about the world is flat, like it's like you can get frustrated very quick because it's like, wow, like, but I'm going on a tangent here. Let me pull it way back in. The point I'm trying to make is if you want to make the argument that the Native Americans that were here were black, what I would like for you to do is make that argument from a studied position. Go read the work of Ivan Van Sertima, because he doesn't even go as far to make that assertion. Right? What happens is people are taking the fact that Africans did travel here prior to Columbus. Yes, there were some Africans who settled here prior to Columbus, but guess what? Those people are still African people. So the point I'm trying to make is that within this movement, a lot of the excitement and the energy, sometimes it's misdirected, but a lot of times it's misinformed. So with love, I would say before you start to make these very audacious claims about history, just challenge the claims by actually just looking at a little bit of like historical documents, texts that are evidence-based, not just like the narrations or narratives.
I just want a quick question. I know you can move on to the next caller. Are you telling me that the Native American Indians of the Americas were not highly melanated black people?
Yes, I am telling you that, brother.
They were not.
Yeah, I'm telling you that there were
respectfully.
What was that?
Your information is incorrect because that's not everyone can. I think ask people in your comment section, were Native Americans black, and they would tell you yes, that's common.
I would just encourage you, brother, to go whatever you state, right? You have to have evidence to validate it. But an intelligent person, when they're validating evidence, they just don't look at the evidence that confirms what they believe. They look at all the evidence that's presented, right? So you have to look at the evidence that also, and there's plenty of it, that also counters your statement. The truth is somewhere in the middle, but in order to get there, it takes a sober assessment and not one that's, you can't have like. Yeah,
I'm gonna let you go. I'm not gonna. I just want to say this, and I'll go. I think it's very disrespectful to Black Americans' ancestors, your American ancestors that were here in these American lands for 500, 600, whatever years, to not even acknowledge them, to act like they don't even exist.
And that's what I feel like is disingenuous. Don't acknowledge them, brother.
Huh? Because you're saying that they weren't Blackfoot Indians, whatever. I mean, but at the end of the day, I want to say this, and I'll let you go. I think Pan-Africanism has been one-sided. And if you look at Marcus Messiah Garvey, who even said that the African American race, they held a huge key to uplifting the entire Black race, right? Those are Marcus Garvey's words. And we see how Liberia did him. And Black Americans do experience, the only time Pan-Africanism is a thing is when it can be what can Black Americans do for the country that they're going into this Pan-African operation with. I mean, that's a reality. That's a fact. So I'm all for Pan-Africanism, but I think to acknowledge and accept the reality that, yeah, Pan-Africanism has been one-sided. There's nothing wrong with that, brother.
Respectfully.
Yes, sir.
The rhetoric around Pan-Africanism being one-sided is often repeated from folks who either A, have no idea what Pan-Africanism is, or B, frequent spaces where that is, a consistent talking point. And, from your passion, like first of all, I appreciate that you even, that you're here, right? Because you're like, that means that you're willing to have conversations outside of your echo chamber. So I have to respect that. You know what I mean? That the fact that you're here and you're standing firm on kind of like what it is that you believe. But what I would say is that what you believe Pan Africanism to be, or your interpretation of it, brother, is not, it's not correct. And I think that that's a major problem with this iteration of either both ADOS and FBA, because the sad part about it is that most people in this generation who are involved in either one of those groups heard the term Pan Africanism for the first time, and I just lost Neff. My bad, sis. I wanted her to be able to close it out, but most people heard it for the first time as it was being attacked from Yvette Carnell and, you know, subsequently FBA. Prior to that, folks had never even heard about it or heard of it. So the only thing that they know of it is the attacks that they've heard from within the circles they ran in. But brother, I appreciate you pulling up, King Messiah.
Appreciate it.
All right,
Thanks for having me.
for sure.